rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you can take a roll call, please.
Commissioner Gasco.
Present.
Commissioner Gatto. Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Manny.
Oh, present.
Commissioner Merrick.
Here.
Commissioner Shaw. Commissioner Tibbetts.
Here.
Commissioner Truxell.
Here.
Chairman Gray.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. We'll move on to communication staff. Are there any communications at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay. We'll move on to the approval of the meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 1st, 2022 regularly scheduled Plan Commission meeting?
So moved.
Okay, we have a
Second.
Second. Motion made by Commissioner Manny, seconded by Commissioner Tibbetts. All those in favor of approving the September 1st, 2022 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. We'll move on to item 1 for this evening. Item 1 is a public meeting to consider recommending that the village board grant Ryan Syrian, the property owner, a resolution for a plat of subdivision, Island 1 subdivision, from 1 lot into 2 lots at 6523 Oak Street in the R6 PD Medium Density Residential Zoning District. This is just a public meeting, so we don't have to officially open it. So at this time, I will give it over to staff for their presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Gray. So the existing site is located here. It is shown in red. It's a single lot. Our petitioner, Ryan Syrian, is the owner of the property. It's located south of Oak Forest Avenue, east of 65th Avenue, more readily known as somewhat east of the Boulevard development. The lot itself is a little over 22,000 square feet. It is a double frontage lot. So the north side of this residential lot faces Vogt Street with one home on the lot that fronts to the north. And then to the south is 173rd Place, which ends in a cul-de-sac. So this is, overall, this development, it's a very old part of Tinley Park and was subdivided in 1912. So as far as the zoning, it is in the R6 medium density residential and has immediate neighborhood residential surrounding it. One thing to note, you can see from the parcel lines that the properties to the immediate east and west are subdivided with 2 homes on each side. As far as the existing structures, so the lot has a single home. It's a 1.5 story, and it has a detached garage with a canopy on the back of that. And in the aerial, this was taken, at that time, there was a pool and deck, but the owner has stated these were recently removed. So here are some images that show the property from the north and from the south. And so you can see here's a blown up existing plat of survey. So you can see the detached garage is towards the middle of the property. It is a existing non-conforming situation where these type of accessory structures are a minimum code requirement of 5 feet. They're located 3.1 feet. These are from the west property line, which is not being altered by the proposal. So in short, the petitioner proposes to subdivide the 1 lot into 2. Reasoning for this, it's a relatively large property with the rear portion unused, and it would allow for future residential development. Here is an image of the proposed plat. So shown in red would be the new property line separating north from south, lots 1 and 2. And staff has reviewed this in terms of our zoning code area and lot bulk density requirements. So they meet these requirements per the proposed split as shown. So the north lot would be almost 12,000 square feet. And the second lot would be 8772 square feet. The proposal is to keep the existing home on the north lot, which is proposed lot 1, and proposed lot 2 thus would be vacant. The petitioner is tentatively considering at this time a 2-story duplex, single-family, semi-detached type of property. So only conceptual plans were provided. The consideration for this item is for a by right subdivision. So not necessarily a architectural type of review, but code requirements such as the first floor masonry requirements were communicated to the petitioner. So here's an image of one conceptual possibility that he's considering. So in the specifics for this, for Lot 2, there are a variety of code requirements, as I mentioned before, for area, lot, bulk, density. So these are all proposed to be compliant with the code, so setbacks as well. All of these were also discussed with the owner. There is a requirement of a minimum of 5 parking spaces, so that could be indoor or outdoor. So the petitioner is aware of that and seeking to, at the time of permits, building construction permit submittal, look into having 3 spaces on the outside and 2 on the inside. So the proposal for the plat of subdivision, as with other typical cases, will be subject to final engineering review before recording. Also, with this type of development, sidewalks would need to be installed, and that would be done with permitting. And also, any potential future easements would need to be addressed before the permit issuance for construction. So in terms of understanding how the lot line would affect existing structures, proposed plats of survey were prepared for both of the 2 lots. So the first lot showing the setbacks, you can see the 3.1 setback to the west. Of course, even though this is non-conforming, it does not change, it's not affected by the subdivision. And importantly, to the south, there is sufficient distance, 6.5 feet to the proposed south lot line. So that concludes the staff presentation. I have a motion up on the screen, and the petitioner, Ryan Syrian, is here.
Okay. Does the petitioner want to add anything?
I'm Ryan, and this is my wife Jill, and we're the people that are splitting the property. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Ron and Jill. With that, I'll ask for any comments or discussion from the commissioners, beginning with Commissioner Hamilton.
Does the proposed split of the property line up with the neighbors' property lines?
It's very close. So I can show also, it's about 108 feet or so. So here is how you can see how the
Yeah.
existing parcel lines are. So we don't have a plat of survey for those neighboring properties, but it will be very close.
Okay.
And the 2 neighboring properties are off, if you could kind of see from there, so it wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to match both of them. So,
Yes, right.
yeah, there's just off a little bit.
Commissioner Tibbetts.
I mean, you're very lucky to have a lot that large. And it looks like you're gonna lose your pool when you do that. No? Okay. Yeah, I think it's a very, a very good idea.
Commissioner Meany.
No comments.
Okay. Commissioner Gasko.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Commissioner Truxell.
I'm just curious, there's no other duplexes in the neighborhood, so do we expect any issues from neighbors that may object to this?
So on the bottom side, I'm gonna say the south side there's a 12 unit, and then there's 2 4 units
Okay.
across the street.
It's a very mix, and then there's townhomes on the street, there's single-family homes, it's a really mixed block right there.
Okay.
And actually, there was that one that got continued a couple times, the Marcotte
Is it same neighborhood?
duplex conversion, it's the same street, so.
Okay.
There could be another duplex on the block in the near future, so. And they'll have the option to, the only thing the lot will support is either detached, single-family, or duplex, so with the size.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So why is it 5 parking spaces required?
Because 2.5 parking spaces are required per unit, and it would be 2 units.
Yeah, so I can see easily, you know, it's a single-car garage and you have 1 spot in the driveway. I don't know where that third car's, or half of a car is gonna go. So is that,
So it actually rounds down,
What?
which, it's actually rounds down, so like overall for that, but we're also including that as kind of like one development.
Okay.
So they would just have to basically have 1 more spot, which could be essentially for guest parking. I don't know. All
right.
But normally for like duplexes, you have a 2-car garage and then 2 spots on the driveway.
Right.
So they just have to find a way to kind of get that 5th car in there somewhere.
and then does the final plan come through this commission again, or is it up to engineering and
If
the
it's a by right,
conditions? The
yeah,
conditions are yours.
if it's a by right building is
Okay.
well there, it would just be a building permit.
Okay.
If they had, let's say they wanted to ask for only 4 parking stalls total, then it would be a variation. that would
Variation,
come here,
right.
But otherwise, it'll just be a building permit.
Thank you, those are my only questions.
Okay, Commissioner Merrick.
I'd just say for the record, it looks like it would add to property tax values, so looks good to me.
I echo a lot of the comments that the commissioners have said. I think it looks fine. It meets the minimum lot size and width requirements. I like the fact that it is subject to final engineering approval. As staff said, the property lines don't worsen. So I think it checks all the boxes. So I'm okay with it as well. Since we don't have to actually close the public meeting, should we go right to the making a motion?
Yeah. There's no standards or anything with plats that are by right plats, so you just go straight to the motion. If you want to expedite this, you can just say at the end of this, subject to the conditions as referenced in the staff report. So you don't have to read all 3 of those conditions. So for whoever makes that motion.
Okay. At this time, I have a motion regarding the final plat for this item.
I'll take it. I make a motion to recommend that the village board grant approval to petitioner Ryan Syrian a final plat of subdivision for the property located at 6523 Vote Street in accordance with the final plat dated August 24th, 2022, subject to the following 3 conditions that were clearly stated in the staff report.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Truxell, seconded by Commissioner Gaskell. Lori, may I have a roll call?
Commissioner Gaskell.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
Commissioner Manny.
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Tibbetts.
Yes.
Commissioner Truxell.
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, the motion is carried. For this item, Dan, we'll go to the village board, then on, October 4th, 2022, so Ryan and Jill give the staff on the details on the time to attend, and good luck.
Lori will follow back up with you, and just kind of let you know about the meeting. There won't be a presentation or anything, it usually goes pretty quick. So she can follow up with you. And you're welcome to stay, you're also welcome to go be free, so up to you guys.
Can I bring one thing up?
Sure.
I would be the only one with this sidewalk on the whole street, is that weird? Or do I start the?
Yeah, so it is a requirement if somebody, when there's a development there, that the sidewalk goes in. For the most part, near the downtown there, we want to start pursuing sidewalks out there. So when development comes in, the alternative would be you could pay a cash in lieu to the village that would
I don't
cover
care
the
that we
cost
have
of it.
I just thought it would be weird.
But we usually leave that to the village engineer. If they're already planning to do the whole thing, maybe they'll just say, pay the cash in lieu and we'll just do it all. If they don't have timing, sometimes they'll have you put the sidewalk in, so.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay. We'll We'll move on to item 2 for tonight. Item 2 is a public hearing to consider recommending that the village board grant Bentonhausen's Motor Sales Incorporated a special use permit for used automobile sales at 17514, 17551, and 17600 Oak Park Avenue in the Legacy NG Neighborhood General Zoning District. May I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Make a motion.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Gaskell, seconded by Commissioner Truxell. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. I have received certification that the public hearing notice was published in the local newspaper. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter will be sworn in before they speak, but after the staff's presentation. So staff, please
Sure.
proceed.
I'm gonna assume that all the commissioners have read the staff report, and I'm just give you a kind of a quick summary of this, because I think most people know where this is at on Oak Park Avenue. Bettenhausen's been a car dealer in town for quite some time, since 1958 at this location. They've traditionally done new car sales here, so over the years, it's gone through quite a few different brands, from Dodge, Ram, Chrysler, Maserati, Jeep, whatever else they've had there. So it's kind of rotated through those new car dealers over the years. Obviously, there's been a shift to 159th Street, kind of some larger trafficked areas other than Oak Park Avenue compared to 1958. But they still have a home here on this site and have a nice building there that was built in 2001. So instead of, in the most recent years, it's kind of functioned as just a storage facility for their other dealerships. They want to utilize the site now as a used car dealer. So why we have that as a different special use, it did have approval as a new car dealer, but obviously a used car dealer functions a little bit differently than new car dealers, and the concerns are a little bit different as well. Just wanting to make sure that basically it's quality cars that are going in there. We're not getting junk or lemon cars. But Bettenhausen has a permanent dealership in town, which I think makes this a good fit, and they have a high level of service that I think has, again, been proven by their years here in Tinley Park. So they are transitioning to their new branding of this site as the garage, as well as a Brawnability franchise here that has like service, ADA vehicles. So that's what they're planning to sell from this location. And so that's really it. It's just transferring this site kind of from a new car dealer to a used car dealer. It includes a few properties, so not just the kind of primary one with the newer building on it that was built in 2001, but there is to the south of that what was kind of their used car dealer portion of that. That was, again, attached to it being a new car dealer. And then across the street, they have vehicle storage as well attached to that car dealer. So that's all kind of part of this to become a used car dealer approval. We have a few conditions we've attached to this as well, just to kind of make it clear going forward that they have to maintain a new car dealership in the village, and that any vehicles basically have to be for sale, and that this won't just be a large storage lot, and that basically the automotive repair work stays at what it has been in the future. It doesn't become some kind of body shop. So that's all I have, and they have a representative here as well from Bettenhausen, if you have any questions.
Yeah,
So,
sure, please approach.
I'm John Doolin. I'm the Marketing, Advertising, and Business Development Director for Bettenhausen. So thanks for considering what we're doing here. A little bit of background, if you want a little background into the facility.
I'm just gonna swear you in.
Oh, yeah,
Before
sure,
we get
yeah.
going. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help me God.
Okay,
There you go.
proceed, John.
So a little bit of background of how we got here. Obviously, it was Alfa Romeo and Maserati for a while. Ended up selling that to Joe Rizza. Fortunately, and unfortunately, the pandemic hit and we were out of that luxury car business. We obviously did not want to vacate Tinley Park in any fashion, so we just kind of held on to it. It is an official offsite of Stellantis for our other location in Tinley Park, which enables us to relieve the traffic up on 80th Avenue up there and drop off the new cars here, and then within 24 hours, they're shipped up to the other location. It really is for us just a traffic alleviator over there with the trailers coming in and that kind of stuff. We started negotiations with Braun mid-2020. Braun is a mobility dealer. They convert new cars, really, well, technically they come off as used cars, but you buy a new van, everything's taken out of it, so it's technically becomes a used car at that point. That negotiation went on for about 18 months, so that took a little bit longer than we anticipated, because they had another dealer, and there's basically miles and franchise laws and all that was underperforming, and they wanted us to take it over. There was just time that we could not take it over. And at that point, that's when we went into the classic cars. So we have about 1.2 million of classic cars right now. It's the safest facility for us to store those over there. So to Dan's point, anything on the lot will be for sale. Anything you see that stacks up will be gone within 24 hours, which is on its way to the other store. In terms of service, they will convert and service only Braun Ability cars, which would be the conversion of select models to mobility, and they'll only service classic vehicles over there. So there'll be no body shops, none of that type of stuff. So we're excited to be back on Oak Park Avenue with a viable business. Like we said, we didn't want to give it up in any fashion, so we held on to that, and we appreciate the consideration to issue the permit, and off we go. It looks good. Put about $300,000 into the building at this point. So it's exciting. It's lit. The new logos are cool. We've had a couple events that we permitted through the city to launch it, so we drew about 500 people the other night, a couple Fridays ago. So the classic car business is good, and the Braun business is really, really good, and I think it helps everybody in the community. And now it's really essentially the closest mobility dealer in the area, so we're excited. Yeah. Any questions? I've answered any questions.
Yeah, John, I'm gonna go through the
Yeah.
commissioners and see if they have any
Sure.
questions or comments for discussion. Begin with Commissioner Merritt.
I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Truxton.
No, I think it's a great idea, and even with the classic cruise nights that we have in town.
Yeah.
Might be having some people hanging out in your lot a little more,
Yeah.
so good idea.
So we're working with Jim Palermo on that for next year
Yeah.
with their Tuesday night things to kind of, either house something down by us while they go down there, or,
Yeah, of course.
those types of things, so.
Nice idea.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Commissioner Gasko.
I'm just glad Bettenhausen is staying on Oak Park Avenue.
Well, it was very, very important to Harlan, is their father, who was in town a couple weeks ago. Obviously, we're opening in Lockport, which probably everybody knows, so that's gonna be a new facility for us. That'll be a $14 million project out there. But our roots are here in Tinley Park. We all went to Tinley Park High School. I mean, we're fully vested here, and we have every intention of making that location one of the coolest places in town.
Excellent. Commissioner Mann.
No comments from me.
Great,
Commissioner Tibbetts.
I think it's great to have you.
thank you.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Looks good.
Fantastic. Mike apologizes. He was actually at a Lockport dinner tonight, but he will be here for the 4th when hopefully you grant what we want to do, and he'll be excited to answer any other questions that the board may have.
I have no comments. I think it's good. I had a friend still do, who's quadriplegic, and, I've driven his van. It's all set up, so I think it's a good service for.
Yeah, it's great, and stop on out. I mean, the inside is, like I said, $300,000 of just, cleanup and painting and just cool stuff, and the mobility thing has really taken off, and we're excited to be able to help those people in need like that.
Excellent. Thank you for your time, John. If
No.
there's anybody else in the public wishing to speak? If not, staff, can you go through the standards?
Yeah, it's just gonna be a quick summary. You can take a seat if you
Yep.
want. Yeah. So essentially, this is an existing site, and then, so it already has utilities, ingress, egress, and that the sales and service of new vehicles and handicap vehicles are attached, at least partially, to their larger dealership. And again, they have a history here in the village as a reputable dealer of used cars, and that, in generally, this is a positive economic development for the community as a whole to keep a car dealer on Oak Park Avenue and activate the site as well, compared to that being either vehicle storage or a vacant site or something like that. This is generally a positive for property tax, how it looks, as well as sales tax. So that's the summary of the standards that are in the staff report.
Okay, I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
Motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Gaskell,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Tibbetts. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. Now I would like to have a motion for a special use permit regarding this item.
And the same thing here if you want to just reference the conditions in the staff report, if you don't want to read them all. It's up to you.
Okay. I make a motion to recommend that the village board grant a special use permit to the petitioner Bettenhausen Motor Sales Incorporated to operate a used car dealer with accessory automotive repair at set 17514 through 17600 Oak Park Avenue in the Legacy DC and NG zoning district according to submitted plans and adopt the findings of fact as listed in the September 15th, 2022 staff report with the following conditions referenced in the staff report.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion made by Commissioner Gaskell, seconded by Commissioner Truxell. Lori, could I have a roll call?
Commissioner Gaskell.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
Commissioner Manny.
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Tibbetts.
Yes.
Commissioner Truxell.
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, the motion is carried. So John, this would go to the village board on Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. Good luck.
No, thank you very much, and stop out and see us. It's really, there's some neat stuff in there. And if you're not familiar with mobility, there's a legacy line that Braun is an interesting company as well. There's a nice timeline on kind of how they developed, and so it has some museum aspect kind of to it too, you know, if there's things to look at and things to check out. So we appreciate everybody, and we're glad to be back on Oak Park.
Okay. Excellent.
Do you need anything else from me?
No, you're free to go. With that, we'll move on to item 3 for tonight. Item 3 is a public hearing to consider recommending that the village board grant the petitioner, Father Teresa S. Villaverde Jr., on behalf of St. Julie Billiard Catholic Church, variations from section IX.E, dimensional regulations for wall and freestanding signs, and section IX.J, electronic message center regulations of the zoning ordinance at the property located at 7399 159th Street in the R4 Single Family Residential Zoning District. The granting of these variations will permit an additional freestanding ground sign where a maximum of 1 is permitted, and which is taller than the 6 feet maximum height, larger than the 30 square foot maximum size, with an electronic message center sign to exceed the maximum size of 20% of the total sign area of a freestanding sign. At this time, I have a motion to open up the public hearing.
So
Make- Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Manny, seconded by Commissioner Gaskell. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. I have received certification of the public hearing notice being published in the local newspaper. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter will be sworn in before they speak, but after staff's presentation. So staff, if you could proceed at this time.
Thank you. The existing site is shown here on 159th Street, south side of the street, a little west of Harlem Avenue, immediately east of Olcott. It is a large church. St. Julie Billiard is part of property that was annexed in 1976 and 1980. The property's 8.5 acres, and as you can see from the aerial, it has a large amount of parking immediately adjacent to 159th Street, with the building being set back quite some distance with additional parking beyond it. So as far as the access to the site, here's an image of coming from 159th Street. So the primary access is from the north. So you can see here that there's a green parkway and there's a large parking lot with long parking islands. So on the site right now, there are 2 existing ground signs. So the one that was kind of in profile in the previous photo is a non-conforming frame sign that you can see up on top there. It's highly visible from 159th. It's close and perpendicular to the roadway, so vehicles can easily see it. And the other existing sign is a permitted brick ground sign that is parallel to the roadway, set further back on one of the parking islands. It's a non-illuminated sign, and you can see in the lower right photo, the perspective that the sign is not readily visible from the right-of-way. The building itself is set back about 350 feet from the north of the property, so there's kind of a zoomed-in view of this contemporary brick structure. So as far as the zoning, this is the uniqueness of it. It's the R4 single-family residential zoning district. It's in an area that has a mix of land uses. So as everyone is well aware, 159th Street is a heavily trafficked arterial corridor. So there's a lot of commercial in the area. To the north, across the street is not in our village, that's Orland Park. And that's part of their business zoning district. So a lot of outlots and inline tenants over there. And to the east is the Park Center Plaza, and further south are, you can see in dark brown, are townhomes that are zoned R6, and to the west is a combination, at the northern part is also R6, it's multifamily residences, called Residences 159, and single-family homes below that. So as far as the signs in the area, this image here, a couple of these images the petitioner provided to give an idea of context and character of the neighborhood. On the right side, you can see the Aldi sign, the Whistle sign. These are larger signs because the commercial zoning regulations for signs are greater, whereas residential is more restrictive. Residential does include a breakdown of institutional and residents within that district, but nonetheless, it's much smaller. So one case that came to the village last year was for down the street at Trinity Lutheran. They wanted to replace their sign. So that went through and was approved, so it's a comparison of another church sign in the area on 159th Street. They were approved for sign area, sign height, and electronic message center percentage. So our code has a maximum 20% of the sign area is permissible for an EMC. So the sign code requirements, there are 2 sections of the code, and the first section is on dimensional regulations. So the petitioner is requesting to exceed the requirements for sign face area and height and quantity of freestanding signs. The sign face area is 30 square feet. The height is 6 feet. And the quantity of freestanding signs is one, but 2 may be permitted if it is with at least 300 feet between the signs. So there's a minimum distance requirement. So these are the code requirements for that section. And then secondly, the EMC, electronic message centers, are regulated in another part of the sign code as 20% of that total sign area. So the petitioner proposes to remove the non-conforming white frame sign and replace in a similar location on the property with a new freestanding sign, and it will have the EMC with the brick base. The brick will try as much as possible to closely resemble the brick on the other sign as well as the building. The petitioner's representative sign contractor noted that the exact brick is not available, but they will find something closely resembling it. So here you can see what the breakdown is on the proposal and the deficiencies. So they're proposing a 47.7 square foot sign, so it exceeds by 17.75 square feet. The height is proposed at 10 feet, so they're going over by 4. The quantity of signs requirement of 300 feet apart, it will be proposed as approximately 85 feet. And the EMC is proposed at 38.3%. So here's an image of the site plan that the petitioner provided, so you can see up in the, it's to the west of the main driveway, and you can see the line that denotes the approximate 85 feet between the existing sign on the parking island and the proposed sign. And so lastly, this is the signage itself. So it's 10 feet high, and you can see there's kind of a balance between the electronic message and the signage above. You know, if the signage, or on this next screen, I will identify if the signage were to fully comply, if you had a sign with up to 20% of a 30 square foot sign, that EMC would only be 9.5 square feet. So it'd be pretty small, likely not readable and suitable for its purpose on that type of roadway, not compatible with the essential character of the neighborhood. So the proposed sign for these variations helps better identify the site. And, you know, this is a unique situation where it's in a residential district with a lot of commercial nearby. Staff notes that it appears to be proportional to the building size and overall development, so given the setbacks and the size of the property. That concludes staff presentation. I have Father Tirso Villaverde with St. Juliet Church here, as well as his representative from Dan Bruggen Science.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Yeah, Father, if you want to speak, give a presentation. If you want to speak on this, you're more than welcome. If not, that's fine
Do I
too.
need to be sworn in or?
I'll swear you guys in. If you both are going to speak.
Yeah,
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. And just state your name when you do speak.
Okay.
Just I'll have it for the record.
Yeah, so again, my name is Father Tirso. I'm the pastor at St. Julie's. Yeah, so the sign project is part of an improvement plan for the parish, and so I do thank the village for considering it. I'm here to answer any questions. Technical questions about the sign itself will probably be more Sam. I've been dealing with Brad, so I forgot his, mixed up the names. But yeah, so we're here to just answer any questions.
Sure. And you guys can take a seat. Sam, if you're needed, we'll have you come up and then just state your full name.
Sure.
You're already sworn in. We'll begin with Commissioner Manning. Any comments for discussion?
My comments, you know, the sign is, I think, great, for the overall size that, you know, the overall size appears to be larger, but this is it tapers, you know, so it's not really a 12-foot rectangular sign, but it's great to identify, you know, the church, you know, since the church is pushed back, and because 159th Street, you know, fast traveler, so it's a good, you know, good wayfinding for the church. So, I mean, I like what I see.
Okay,
That's it.
excellent. Thanks, Commissioner Tibbetts.
Just to clarify, are we asking for 2 signs or just 1? Or is the original one going to be taken down?
So there are 2 signs on the property right now.
Mhm.
The brick sign will remain. The existing white frame sign will be removed.
Okay.
And in a very similar footprint to where that sign to be removed will be the new sign. So there will be 2 signs total.
And the existing sign, I believe, meets the code requirements that would typically be permitted in a residential zoning district. And it's really, it's parallel with the street, so it's really not used as like in advertising. It's more like when you enter, you see that sign. But that one actually meets the code. So you're approving to allow for 2 signs, but that one otherwise meets the requirements.
Okay, any other questions?
Do we really need the 2 signs? I mean, is it detrimental to the church to have just the 1 sign and not both?
I'm Sam Van Bruggen from Van Bruggen Signs. The sign as staff presented, the one that's parallel and set back from the street, really isn't visible on 159th Street with all the traffic. It's really positioned and intended more to be a welcoming sign as you pull into the parking lot, and it doesn't really have good visibility on 159th Street. So, that is a secondary sign and really kind of a welcoming sign. And it really doesn't identify to the traffic on 159th very well at all.
I will concur. When my teenage years and young adult years, I used to attend St. Julie's, and that 100% is not really visible from the side, especially 159 with those speeds. So I do concur with that.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
No, I'm in favor of the new sign.
Commissioner Hamilton.
So the situation is that the code that applies here really shouldn't apply. It's more for tucked away residential areas where you don't need such a large sign. But in this case, we happen to have a residential zoning right next to a major thoroughfare where you're trying to identify the building. So it makes sense to me. Just curious, are there formulas for coming up with the size of a sign in this kind of situation, or do you just sort of by experience say, okay, we need it to be this big and this long?
Well, I think I can say that we started out with a little taller sign, a little bit bigger sign, and then working with staff, tried to get it down to something that we thought would be acceptable, palatable, and still effective. So there are formulas and distances, its speed, how many lanes of traffic and that type of thing. We think the sign that's presented will do the job, but if you go any smaller than that, then it's just not going to communicate. Same thing with the message center. That's why we're asking for a larger message center, is that you put one that complies with the code, and it's going to be too small. It actually becomes more dangerous because you can't read what it says. So because of the amount of traffic and that type of thing. So we think it's well designed and proportioned for that site.
I'll say my as for my personal professional opinion is that the 20% requirement on those LED signs does make it either forces you to make a bigger sign even if you didn't want it, so you could get a bigger LED center, or if you start complying with it, it does lead to either really small letters or you're not able to actually put enough information on it. So the intent of that when it came in was that you still wanted the majority of the sign to be a sign, not an LED message center. You still want it to function like a sign, but I think 20% gets a little too restrictive in my opinion. So it's something I think we're going to look at in the future as we tweak our code, is what's the right number. We don't want it to be 75% as a message center, but 20 seems to be a little too restrictive. So we've had a couple other variations, like with, I think the last one was Harley Davidson on LaGrange Road. They got a very similar variation.
And my last comment would be, there was an example of the Trinity Lutheran sign that was part of the staff report. And, are we following a similar proportion here for this sign as was finally decided upon for the Trinity Lutheran sign? Because I would note there's a little difference in the situations because the Trinity building is much closer to the street. So it's easier to identify the building and I guess less necessary for a larger sign, but those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Gasko, any?
No comments.
Commissioner Truxell.
Commissioner Hamilton pretty much nailed the same questions I was going to have, but So we've got a residential lot mixed in with commercial, and that's kind of where we've got four variances, I guess, or four, the dimensions are off in 4 places. So if this was a commercial lot, we wouldn't have that issue then, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
For example, for the height, 10
Yeah.
feet would comply.
Yeah, so no issues with this. I just think maybe if it was a commercial lot, we wouldn't be talking about it, so no problem.
And that's a little bit of the direction we've given both Trinity and them was if you stick within the commercial requirements,
Yeah.
you should be okay. Because it kind of fits with that overall
It does.
corridor.
Yeah,
The weirdness of having residential lots happens everywhere. That's just where churches kind of typically fit within and you don't really want to allow churches in your business districts because they're really not designed for that. If they could move into a shopping center or something. So you don't want to rezone it or allow them in like a B3 zoning district. So you kind of keep them in the
Okay.
residential ones, but the signage doesn't always, something like that doesn't
Sure.
always translate.
I get it. Thanks, Dan. That helps understand.
Okay. Commissioner Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same conversation we had when Trinity Lutheran came, right? And I asked, why are churches zoned residential, right? And we had the same discussion, because the other one was on 159th as well. So I have nothing to add. This makes sense to me.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Merrick. I echo a lot of the comments, the discussion of the commissioners. Good question, by the way, everybody. And I'm okay with the variations as well. The number, having 2 instead of 1, the height, the square footage of the sign, and even the increased electronic message board being like 38%. I do think it is unique, and that it is zoned as the residential, but surrounded by commercial off of the 159th Street. And as Commissioner Merrick and a lot of the other commissioners had alluded to, very similar to the Trinity Lutheran. So I don't have any other further comments. I think it looks good. I think it will identify, the church to people who pass by 159th Street. With that, if there's anybody else wishing to speak from the public? If not, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I heard a motion made by Commissioner Truxell, seconded by Commissioner Tibbetts. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hearing none, the public hearing is closed. The motion is carried. So staff, can you please present the standards at this time?
Up on screen, I have the first 2 standards. So this is regarding reasonable return. So the staff has drafted this response that the location of the sign along a heavily traveled arterial commercial roadway makes it difficult for the content to be readable if limited to residential. Zoning district regulations, commercial requirements are more appropriate due to location. Secondly, regarding the unique circumstances, similarly noted, its location on this commercial roadway being subject to residential, which is more restrictive. This site is larger than most residential lots with direct frontage on the roadway, and given the higher vehicle speeds and length of time to read a sign, this is also an issue, and a fully compliant sign would likely not be easily readable. The proposed sign will help better identify the site when approaching by car. And the third standard to note regarding essential character of the locality, given its location on the commercial roadway and the larger size of the property, being it's similar to commercial properties in the area. There are other signs in the area that are generally more commercial and larger in size than those that would otherwise comply with residential regulations. The sign, again, helps better identify the site and is proportionally appropriate and similar to other signs in the corridor. And then here's the 4th standard, as we note in the staff report, which does not require findings of fact. That concludes standards.
time. May I have a motion regarding variations for this item?
I make a motion to recommend that the village board grant the following variations from the zoning ordinance to the petitioner, Father Tercio S. Villaverde Jr. on behalf of St. Julie Billiard Catholic Church at the property located at 7399 159th Street in the R4 Single Family Residential Zoning District, consistent with the submitted plans and adopt the findings of fact as proposed in the September 15, 2022 staff report with the condition that existing frame sign be removed. One, a variation from section 9.j.4 electronic message center maximum allowable size regulations of the zoning ordinance with an electronic message center sign that is 38.3% of the total sign area instead of the maximum of 20%. And number two, variations from the section 9.8.1 dimension regulations for wall and freestanding signs of the zoning ordinance to permit a freestanding sign that is 47.5 square feet in signs face area size instead of the maximum of 30 square feet, 10 feet in height instead of the maximum of 6 feet, and as a second freestanding ground sign less than 300 feet from the first sign, exceeding the maximum of one freestanding sign.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Manning, seconded by Commissioner Gaskell. May I have a roll call?
Commissioner Gaskell.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
Commissioner Manning.
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Tibbetts.
Yes.
Commissioner Truxell.
Yes.
Chairman Gray.
Yes. Okay, the motion is carried. This item will go to the village board on Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. So Sam and Father Villaverde, please agree in attendance if you can, and get with staff on
I'll
how.
have to send a representative, I'm gonna be in the Philippines.
Oh, okay, fair enough. As long as you have a representative here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it usually, with the unanimous recommendation, they'll usually go pretty quickly. They typically don't have questions, and so it won't be a presentation like this or anything, so. As long as there's someone just in case they have questions that can answer to why it is what it is, you should be fine.
All right, October 4th is what time, 7 p.m.?
They usually do 6:30.
Yeah, usually 6:30, but we can confirm with you, follow up.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good luck and safe travels to the Philippines, Father. Okay, we'll move on to the final item on today's agenda. Item 4, it's a workshop to consider recommending that the village board grant Richard Silverman on behalf of MJK Real Estate Holding Company, LLC, a special use for a planned unit development Plat subdivision for the new construction of a Chipotle restaurant. Staff, please make your presentation.
Thank you. So the existing site is shown in the aerial on the screen. As per the staff report, these images are the same as what you've reviewed already. So in the dashed green is the entire development that would be the request for creation of a planned unit development. And in red would be the proposed Chipotle restaurant, which is an outlot within this development. So that outlot is currently vacant. It's just to the west of Midas, 159th Street. 71st Court is just to the west. It's more easily recognizable as it's right in front of the Floor and Decor and Hobby Lobby building. The overall property that would include the Chipotle outlot, Floor and Decor, Hobby Lobby, and the Burger King is a little over 500,000 square feet. It's large and was annexed in 1968. There are no immediately surrounding vacancies in the area surrounding these properties. Its general character of the area is that it's a larger shopping area with several outlets, anchors, and inline tenants, including the Tinley Park Plaza redevelopment just to the west. So more about the existing history and the past and how it came to be. So what I'll call the Floor Decor building was built in 1971 for Kmart, and it was renovated for 2 tenants in 1998. And then when Burlington moved and Floor and Decor came in last year, it was renovated again. So at that time, they added some parking lot islands, so some site improvements. And then next door, the Burger King building, that dates to 2010 when it replaced a previous restaurant. What's interesting is that in that approval, the ordinance for it erroneously mentioned a Brementown planned unit development. So given that, there was an understanding that it would have allowed for a drive-through. The zoning is the B2 zoning district, so with that, that ordinance also allowed for reduced parking, reduced minimum lot area, and increased signage. So you can see here the 1998 and 2021 site plans. So the site is developed before the current version of the zoning codes. This is another thing to keep in mind. By creating a planned unit development, this helps bring things into conformance. So with the proposed development of the Chipotle outlet, that's basically the trigger for this PUD creation. And as far as the zoning, as I mentioned, it's in the B2. B2 provides a wide range of retail uses, so this can also be like personal service establishments and types of uses that may go beyond the target area of your local residents, so it may serve a larger trade radius. Highway uses in B2s are generally discouraged. And then for the surrounding areas to the south and east and west are all B2s, and then to the north is Village of Orland Park's business district. So just in general, there are a lot of outlots, anchor tenants, inline tenants. So for the proposed use, the proposal is to do a new construction of a Chipotle and to create a new PUD that would encompass this Chipotle, the Burger King outlet, and the Floor and Decor Hobby Lobby. There are exceptions, which are like variations to the zoning ordinance. So one would be for the pickup lane, what we typically call drive-through, for that to be used in the B2. Also front yard parking, a reduction in parking stalls on the site of the outlot, and a sign face area exceeding the maximum for one of the signs on the north side. So open item 1 would be to consider the overall proposed use and exceptions. The proposed plat would be to take this entire property, which is one lot, one parcel right now, and to break it into one large lot with 2 outlots at the north. So the plat is a few sheets long, and one of the detailed sheets on the plat is information about easements. So you can see at the bottom here with staff's markup in red, there are proposed and existing easements. Notably, there's a cross-access easement, which staff has asked the petitioner to revise to extend it eastward to the east property line. So I've marked that in a red outline. And then also what's a little bit south of that, the petitioner, to help justify and reduce the intensity of the request for reduction in parking stalls on site. They'd like to have 9 parking stalls as part of a cross parking that would be located on the Floor and Decor lot. So that would be south of the outlot. There would be 9 parking stalls for employees. And then as far as so there's 2 easement issues. One is the extension of the ingress, egress, you could call that cross-access easement, going all the way east to the east property line that helps provide access to Menards and other commercial properties over there. And then there's the cross-parking easement. So the staff has noted that the cross-parking easement could be reported on either the plat of subdivision, which would be preferred, or as a separate document simultaneously with the plat. Also on the plat, so at this time, there's those two things that are not shown. What also is shown, though, are some temporary construction easements. Staff's noted this is typically not something that you would find in a plat of subdivision because plats of subdivision are permanent recorded documents. So open item 2 is to review the proposed plat and consider a condition of approval to require the 9-stall cross-parking easement, which may be included in the plat of subdivision or recorded separately at the same time. The cross-access easement shall be revised to include the entrance and main drive aisle connecting all 3 lots. So getting into the site itself, here's the site plan on the right from architectural consultant Seuss Associates. And you can see that 159th is to the north, 71st Court is to the west. So the proposal is to have the building's main entry and focus to face 159th, so not to turn its back on the street that it serves. But the access for vehicles would be to come around through to the south. Pedestrians would have the opportunity to access the site from the north. Sidewalks would be required, and as you can see on the site plan, there's a proposed crosswalk within the site that would go from the sidewalk to the patio. So there's a patio and then the building. On the left, I've given a snapshot of the engineering consultant's plans. They have a geometry plan that called out the improvement that would be for 71st Court. So this is not shown on the architectural site plan. We need to see that coordinated in the drawings. But basically, this would involve doing a crosswalk by cutting the median and providing markings per MUTCD standards with a stop bar being revised and detectable warnings. So the applicant has noted that they're waiting for direction from IDOT. One issue possibly could be, since there are no pedestrian signal heads there at the intersection, it would be up to IDOT to decide if that would be allowed for being able to help connect the site to the west. So other aspects of the circulation on the site, and the components. So, as I noted, first with circulation, it's generally a counterclockwise direction. Go back here real quick. So you can see there's the drive lane, we call this a pickup lane, that would wrap around the building, and then around that would be circulation for vehicles to otherwise access. Coming into the site, which is on the right side, that's double lane access, and then exiting the site goes down to a 1 lane, and there's angled parking on the east and west. 11 vehicles have been identified to be the amount of stacking that they'd have. On the north of the building is a patio that 16 outdoor seats have been identified with, along with some landscaping that wraps around it and a 3-foot-tall open fence. So that's on the north. What we'd be identifying as the front of the building. To the south would be the rear, so that would have an employee entry. There's an electric transformer there with an electrical box along the building and a roof ladder, and trash enclosure with a walkway between the building and the trash enclosure. So the trash enclosure is at the farthest south of the site. So as far as service vehicles, garbage trucks would simply access the trash enclosure on that drive aisle south of the outlot, and delivery trucks for the restaurant itself would be staged on the east side during off hours. And lastly, the 9 off-site parking stalls are shown south of the outlot. So open item to review the overall site plan changes, proposed circulation, and patio. Next is the landscaping. So this is basically a very comprehensive and detailed plan for a very tight site constraint. They largely meet the code, And we have a few waivers that were identified. And also, we do have some landscape screening around the electrical transformer, 30-inch hydrangeas. So details about the waivers, I can just briefly mention. There's 9 canopy tree deficiency, 3 understory trees. We're looking at the north buffer yard is 7 feet wide. The petitioner is proposing to help balance this request by increasing the caliper, so the width of the trees that they will propose from 2.5 code requirement up to 4. Foundational landscaping is code required 10 feet wide. They have 3 feet, and the interior counts for trees based on lot area is deficient by 3. And then there's a small deficiency in interior parking lot landscaping, a little over 700 square feet. So the applicant has done a lot with a very tight site constraint, and so overall staff supported. Next is the architecture. So here you can see the 4 elevations, so I'll just walk you through real quickly. There's, on the upper left is what you'd see from the north, and then would be to the west. So the dark grayish brown is what would be the pickup window. So that's a 5-foot bump out, which is a little bit taller than the rest of the building as well. So it serves as a nice visual accent. And then the second row of pictures on the left, that's the south side of the building. So you can see the roof access ladder, the employee entrance. The electric transformer's not there, but you can see it in the next, a corner of it in the next picture is the little green box. Landscaping's not shown in this plan. At the bottom is the trash enclosure, so it's a 6-foot tall structure. On the south side, we'll have 2 double gates, so that fronts the drive aisle that is along the outlet, and then on the north, which would be facing the main building, would be a single gate. So as far as the materials, that material looks similar to what is proposed for the rest of the building. It's a CMU type of block, and architectural CMU. The gates would be PVC, and I can show you here are pictures from the applicant's submittal, not in the staff report, but still part of the package. So you can see the overall view of the design. It's a clean, contemporary design. There are some details, but it's not a busy design, and it seems to overall fit with the types of development in that area. So behind that, Floor and Decor, for example, has a very clean red and white type of exterior facade design. So here are the details for the architecture. So for the materials, the applicant has submitted some physical samples brought here to the meeting. So this is, we have the 2 bricks. So this would be for the main building. So it's a concrete veneer, and the gray would be for the bump out for the pickup window. So staff noted that the plans looked like it was more of a brown, but this is definitely like a slate color. And then for the canopy and the storefront system, it's provided some chips as well as for trash enclosure. So you can see these, again, they're like a gray. And then trash enclosure, it's not the same gray, but it's a similar tone. It's like a split face.
Thanks, Lori.
You're welcome. So on the rest of the building, there's a few other details. There's some brick soldier coursing that on 2 of the elevations is just over the individual windows, and on the other sides it wraps around. There's, as I said before, a metal fence that's along the patio in the front. And this is open item number 4, to review the samples, discuss exterior material compatibility and colors of the main building, the trash enclosure, and the patio fence, to consider the quantity, appearance, and location of architectural accents, sconce lighting, soldier coursing, et cetera. So there's also sconce lighting and 2 canopies on the building as well. As for signage, there are 3 wall signs proposed, and they are all identical. So they're 37.81 square feet with LED channel letters and logo on a red-brown backer. And code, as far as the size requirements, does limit it to 1 square foot per linear foot of building, up to 120 square feet. So on 2 of the sides, that's not a problem, but on the north, the building is only 34 feet wide. So it's a very small deficiency, or exceeding the code by a few square feet, but not a lot. So the other signs are a ground sign, 10 feet tall, meets code, double-sided, masonry base will match. The applicant has just confirmed that it will match, but it will match the trash enclosure, so that would be the architectural CMU. The other signage are just accessory drive-through, typical signs, clearance bar, and a small directional sign that is at the south of the site, close to where the ingress would be. So it's an open item to discuss whether the size of the north wall sign is appropriate. The sign does not meet zoning code requirements and thus requires an exception. Parking. So the site plan identifies a total of 59 seats, 43 indoor plus 16 outdoor, and 8 employees. Seat count and employee count are what calculates the minimum amount of parking that a site would need. Our code requires 1 parking space per 3 seats and 1 per employee. So code would require 28 per what was provided on the site plan by Seuss Associates. So 19 spaces are provided on site, that means within this outlot, and 9 are proposed to be off-site in the floor and decor lot for the employees. So 1 extra space, even though they will only have 8 employees. So the 19 and 9 comes up to 28. However, it would still require the exception because the exception is only pertaining to the outlot itself. Staff notes that the proposal appears appropriate to the area. The floor and decor building appears to have significant parking already available. If they desired in the future, there is a possibility that they could revise their handicap spaces to the current state allowances where access aisles could be combined. So there's a possibility that some spaces could be added, but staff doesn't see that as an issue at this point. However, as far as the cross parking, staff is proposing a condition that cross parking would need to be recorded in an easement with the village, with the agreement to the village on the plat of subdivision or in a separate easement document at that time. And then this would be prior to, it would also be prior to the permit issuance for the Chipotle development. The reason for this condition is to ensure that that parking would remain. So the open item is to discuss whether the parking is is to discuss whether the parking of the stalls and recorded easement is appropriate. So lighting, there is very basic proposal of wall sconces that flank the main entry on the north and the pickup window on the west. And throughout the site, there are 4 site lighting poles. So they're mounted to meet code, so they're downcast LEDs, 25-foot tall, and the photometric submitted does meet the maximum foot candle requirements of the property line. That concludes the staff presentation. I have a summary of the open items on the screen, and I have Orlando Vivacqua with Seuss Associates here.
Orlando, do you want to approach it? Do you have any comments?
No, we're excited to bring this project to you. Thank you for allowing us to present. I want to thank staff for working with us along the way here. So what you see in front of you is basically a couple cycles of us kind of modifying and massaging the site plan to what you see it today. So we feel that the project is kind of a high-end feel. We took lots of steps to make sure we come to its closest compliance on many aspects with regards to landscaping and parking and situations like that. So one thing I want to sort of highlight with Chipotle is that it's not a true drive-through. It's more of a, mobile pickup order. So you basically dial in or call in your mobile in your order. They'll have it ready for you, and you kind of cycle through the site, and pick it up, and go on your way. So there's no physical ordering at the window, per se, like a true drive-through. So if there's any questions, I could hopefully open.
No problem, Orlando. I'm going to start with some discussion with the commissioners, starting with Commissioner Americo.
So I think it looks good overall. So we've been looking at a lot of drive-throughs lately and pickup windows and that sort of stuff. And I know that there's one that's nearby that often is stacked out into the street, right, which we all know about. So the biggest concern for me, which probably won't surprise people in the room, is about the increased car traffic and then the pedestrian passageway with IDOT part of that. And I'm really interested, I'm glad that you're looking at that as like a major piece about making crossing that street safer for people who are walking over there. And I hope that you'll do whatever you can to follow through with that. But I don't have issues with the rest of it as long as the additional overflow parking is locked in. It seems to make sense to me.
Okay. Commissioner Truxell.
No, overall, great plan, looks good, material's nice, high quality. I think during the busy hours, probably lunch, it's gonna get pretty busy there, even if they phone in ahead of time. So the concern with the stacking may be valid, but I think the way it's facing, the entrance, ingress egress is off of 159th Street, which is a good idea, obviously. So those are my only two comments. Overall, though, very nice addition to that area.
I have a quick question, Orlando. Maybe you do have intimate knowledge or you don't, I don't know. How do the other Chipotle perform with the pickup window only in terms of what you guys, or what you've heard about in terms of the stacking?
As
trends?
far as stacking, from what I understand, it's pretty efficient. They rarely ever need more than a handful of stacks. The whole idea is that I think it's the sequencing, is knowing, sending out when your order is ready and for it to be, for you to come by and basically retrieve it, so.
And they do that on their app? They'll send out, it's ready for pickup?
I believe so,
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I went to Jimmy John's the other day, and it was 20 minutes after I ordered, they weren't ready.
Oh, is
Because
that
they were
right?
so busy. So that's what would cause issues with the stacking, if their order isn't ready.
Yeah, the nice thing is, that in this situation, the way the site's sort of laid out, there's generous stacking. And I understand, with a traditional drive-through, that might be a concern, especially when you have an order point as well as a pickup. In this case, it's all basically stacking, so something would have to be wrong if we're at 11 or 12 and we're coming in the back, into
Right.
that.
You shouldn't be there for 3-5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so we have an existing one in town, in front of Target along Harlem and 191st Street. So that one came through this commission. I'm out there pretty regularly on lunch. It's not Chipotle, it's Jersey Mike's now, so, I've never really seen more than 3 cars there. And I have seen them pull a couple cars forward, so if somebody shows up and maybe something's just not quite ready, they just pull them forward, so it keeps everything else moving that they may have ready. So I've never seen more than 3 cars there. There's less stacking in that one, and we were kind of a little more worried there because we didn't, basically, if it got too far, it went into that main drive aisle that goes around the center. So we were fairly concerned with that one. This one, there's still a main drive aisle, but there's even more stacking in this site. This one might end up being a little busier, I think, than that other location, just because of the access. And I think part of the reason why Chipotle is doing this is I believe their location that's on Harlem is actually really successful for the type of setup they have there. So this is hoping that they have even more customers out here that they can please with having this pickup window and a standalone site. So it might be a little busier, but like you said, there's quite a bit of stacking that goes all the way around the whole site before there would ever be a problem. And then even at that point, the stacking would be within the shopping center area. That would never be preferred, but it's really preferred that it's not out on a public street. So that would pretty much never happen in this situation, so.
Fair points, yeah. And I know what Commissioner Merrick has alluded to. It can get really hairy over at that one place down the road.
Yeah.
Any more comments, Commissioner Truxell?
No, that was it, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Gaskell?
No comments from me.
Commissioner Manning?
I really like the architecture. The architecture of the building, the color palette I like as well, and the thin brick finishes you're utilizing. And the landscape is gonna be fabulous, you know. Around is gonna make it nice greenery around that area. And thank you for selecting Tinley Park.
Excited to be here, yeah.
Excellent. Commissioner Tibbetts?
Yeah, I'm good with your traffic circulation and how that's gonna work. I'm content with that. I'm content with your signage size. I'm also content with the 9-space parking across from the business in Floor and Decor's parking lot. One of my questions on that is, when they do have those 9 stalls for the employees in Floor and Decor's parking lot, are we gonna put a crosswalk for those employees to get to your restaurant safely? I don't know if you've driven through that area. There's a lot of traffic going through there. And it's concerning that we would have not only just employees, but you're gonna get a lot of contractor traffic come into your restaurant, which is also a good reason why your restaurant's there. You're gonna do a lot of business. But we wanna make sure that there's safe passage from that parking lot to your business. So that's a concern. The other thing is you have the ladder going up to the roof in one of the pictures. And I wanted to make sure that we're thinking about, you know, somebody getting up on your roof. That shouldn't be up on your roof, so there should be some type of a metal enclosure down at the bottom of the ladder, like say 8 foot up, that can lock, so that, you know, somebody can't get up there.
No, I appreciate the concern. So what you're not seeing there is a swing gate that goes on the ladder.
Okay,
It's at the base. We don't have it, but yes, I think Chipotle.
I'm very familiar with them.
Chipotle requires it, so
Okay.
yeah. It'll be locked with a padlock to kind of
Absolutely.
try to cut down on some of that mischievousness, yeah.
Yeah, your split face block and the colors are fantastic. It's gonna really bring, I think we're going further east in that section over there, so it keeps getting newer and newer every year over there, so that's good. I think that's really all the comments that I have.
Good, really good comments. I noticed that ladder too, and I thought the same thing, so, great job. Commissioner Hamilton?
Just out of curiosity, I think I see the 9 cross spaces there. They have sort of a hexagon pattern to them. Is that right?
Correct.
Is there some type of drainage being required under that space also? Just out
Yeah,
of
so I
curiosity.
believe that's got underground, right?
Are we talking specifically those 9 stalls?
Yeah, the 9 stalls.
Yeah, that's all been accounted for by the overall shopping center.
Okay, but you're being required to install that for your development.
Yes, that will be isolated on our parcel and then kind of spread out as we cross over into the existing Floor and Decor lot, correct.
Oh, so it begins on your lot?
It will be entirely on our lot. But we will need to connect to an existing storm sewer that's on Floor and Decor.
Okay,
But I believe that is that permeable pavers or permeable
No,
pavement for
no,
this?
that is
No.
not, yeah. The permeable pavers will be up on our lot, where we have our parking.
so it's just the choice of the pattern. to
Exactly, it's
identify
just to identify graphics,
Yeah.
sort of identify the 9 stalls that are remote, correct?
it. Okay.
Yep.
No other comments?
Okay, thank you.
And they did do some unique engineering here with the stormwater, so the majority of it's underground, and that was a challenge, and it's not finalized yet. We kind of deal with that more at final engineering and permitting, but engineering's comfortable with the route they're going, so.
It was interesting, Dan.
Yeah, we went through a number of iterations, options on that, so, till we got to this one.
Okay, I echo a lot of the commissioners' comments here. I'm glad and more confident hearing the pickup lane discussion. With that open item, I think that's fine. I think that would serve us well. The 19 versus the 28 minimum parking, I have no problem with that. I think Commissioner Tibbetts brought up a good point about a safe crosswalk. That is an area that does get quite a bit of traffic. I know that's not on, Chipotle's property per se, and I just want to make sure, so is there agreement for those 9 parking spots be with the Village of Tinley Park or with Floor and Decor?
So right now, it's all one owner, so they're split, so for a moment, these 2 lots will be owned by the same person before they go under separate ownerships. That will be between the new ownership and then the one that's maintaining. But within that agreement, and we don't have it all finalized, but we'll have that get recorded with the actual plat at the same time. What we have worked with them to build into there is to make sure the Village of Tinley Park controls the ability for that to ever get released. So that way, the owner of Floor and Decor can't later go, we want to cancel this thing, and then in 30 days, then we have a Chipotle that's in violation of what their approval was. So we'll maintain that. You still want to be able to have that release in the future in case something new came in to where Chipotle is at and it didn't make sense to have it anymore. But that way, to private end, it's not just a cross-parking agreement, it's an actual easement, something that runs with the land and is mostly permanent.
Makes sense. I think it's just for a
So
standpoint
we're kind of like a party, for them to release it, it would have to go through the village approval.
of, okay, that sounds reasonable. And I don't have an issue with the 3 square foot over on the sign. I think that's, the sign looks nice, it looks neat, and I think it's an incidental overage, so. And I do appreciate you guys bringing the brick samples. Thank you for lugging them up here, Lori. Because in staff's report, it mentioned the color discrepancies, and I know sometimes you print something out and
Right.
it washes out, it's not quite true, so. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but those examples that you bring in, those are much more than that, so. I have no other comments. I think it does look good, it looks neat, and it will be, as some of the commissioners said, it will be a hot spot for sure, 100%. With that, staff, do you have direction on this for, where you'd like to go?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the material samples and its compatibility with the colors and overall, it sounds like, I didn't hear any objections on that. And the other big thing was about the parking of the 9 off-site for the requirement of a recorded easement and parking agreement. The other things are fairly standard. We did have the exceptions to the ordinance. I didn't hear any objections on those either. So I think we'll be in a good position to go forward with the public hearing.
And for a site, this is very, very, very similar to that Smoothie King, obviously, in terms of size, site, layout and stuff, and that kind of had that same exception for the wall sign on it, just because it's a smaller side of the building. If you actually met the code, it actually looks out of proportion, almost with the building. So kind of a similar situation here, so.
Excellent. Well, Orlando, my understanding, correct me if I'm incorrect, Dan or Lori, this will go to a public hearing on, October 6th? 2022, in the same place for the Plan Commission meeting at 7 PM.
Thank you.
So please be in attendance, and
Can't
thank
wait.
you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next item, which is the good of the order. Staff, do you have anything to present?
Just a couple of quick things. Oktoberfest is this Friday through Sunday at the 80th Avenue train station, so come out, enjoy beer or family activities. There's a lot of bands there as well, all kind of German themes, so local breweries and food and games there. So I should be out there tomorrow. I know Jarrell's gonna be there volunteering, and so is Carolyn, so if you see any of us, say hi. We posted for the planner position, and that kind of wrapped up, so we're looking through resumes and hopefully gonna find a few good candidates to interview, and hope to move that forward quickly so we can help out on the planning side of things and help Lori out, who's doing 4 projects now at a time at a meeting sometimes, so. And again, just a thank you to my whole department. I think everybody's working together really well with Kimberly out, me kind of moving up, Jarrell, Lori, Carolyn, Mike Coleman, who's our building official, and then all our permit tax, code enforcement, everybody's kind of stepping up, taking a little more on. So everything's still moving forward, no delays, and we got a lot of good development happening, so it's good to see, and we have a really good team in community development, so. With that being said, the last meeting items that you guys had are going Tuesday, so those haven't gone to the village board yet, but they go to Tuesday's village board. So I'll have an update on those at the next meeting. Loyola is a fairly big noticeable project out there on LaGrange. They're actually putting precast up today, so that project is flying faster than I think we've ever seen something of that scale move. And they have some obviously pretty quick timelines. When they were here before you, before the commission, they were pretty clear about that, so they're moving. Smoothie King is finishing up some of their building and site work. They still have the exterior materials to put on, but they've moved along fairly quickly and have the windows and storefront systems in. So I think that you start seeing that progression in this area with Amazon Fresh, Burlington, in the Brixmore Center, Chipotle, Smoothie King, Floor and Decor, even Hobby Lobby is interesting what a can of paint can do sometimes. They didn't do anything major there, but it gives it a little bit of a refresh on it, so. The Ascent Cannabis Dispensary, that permit was applied for. We got them comments back, so there were nothing major there, so we're hoping they can have their permit relatively soon, and that project should start up this year. D.R. Horton, who's building the Oak Ridge subdivision, kind of over by Tinley Park High School where the old Panduit site is. They've been doing ground clearing out there and grading work. They're really close to getting their overall site work permit. There's just a few last things with engineering. I know they have a call early next week, and so hopefully with kind of one more submittal and a few tweaks, they'll be ready to actually do kind of utilities, infrastructure, roadways, things like that will start going in. I know they want to get selling on the homes too pretty quickly. So. Holiday Inn's moving pretty quickly, and that should be finishing up this year. They still have some exterior work to do, but they're moving pretty quickly on the interior to finish that up. And then lastly, Pete's Fresh Market, for that, the warehouse is kind of finishing up its kind of small addition that it was doing. For the grocery store itself, there's been delays. That's fairly obvious with even the deadlines and the timeline that was here before you guys when they were basically planning to open by the end of this year, and that's what some of the deadlines were tied to. So they will be back before this group and the village board to ask for some kind of tweaks. The good news being that with that, and just the delays are the same as we kind of hear from everyone. It's construction, equipment, it's even getting coolers. He said Pete's Fresh Market's been ordering coolers. They're from one vendor the whole time, and there's a 24-month lead time on them now, so 2 years to get coolers. So they're working through just some of those issues, but they are supposed to be starting the site work for that within the next week or two. And it's gonna kind of start with relocating a NICOR gas main that runs through the parking lot. And then once they get that, they'll start working on the overall parking lot. The good news is they have an outlot tenant kind of identified now, which should be a really good fit with them. So they're kind of working that into that. It's not gonna be part of this approval, but they'll kind of set up and have that pad ready for that tenant to come in. And then they'll come in separately once they kind of get their plans ready, so. Other than that, next meeting is October 6th, and we have a couple items. So Chipotle, and then Brady Gill Funeral Home has their addition, which should be on that one. So that's all I have.
Okay. At this time, I'll ask to receive comments from the public. Seeing none here, we'll move on to the next item, adjourn meeting. May I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
So I had motion made by Commissioner Truxell, seconded by Commissioner Manning. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. This meeting is adjourned at, I think it says
8:37.
8:37 p.m. Okay, guys.